Okay. Then we have Physiognomy Analysis, Jesus Christ, Shroud of Turin. Do we have a new physiognomy analysis video?
Hello everybody, and welcome back to another celebrity face reading. My name is Taylor, and today we will be looking at none other than Jesus Christ himself. Son of God, Lord of all creation, Alpha and Omega. Specifically, we will be looking at the Shroud of Turin, the most credible artifact and relic claiming to portray the image of the God-man himself, Jesus Christ. In addition, we will also be going through a few other depictions of him, including both ancient icons and modern reconstructions, and review
what the heck was that?
Of him, including both ancient icons and modern
what?
Constructions, and reviewing their accuracy, the methodology used to create them, and what these depictions from the Shroud of Turin onward might tell us about his personality, or at the very least the personality of the person depicted here, whether they're Jesus or not. Then we can compare these assessed physiognomies and personalities with the Jesus that we read about in the Bible and the four Gospels, and determine which are the most accurate and which depictions are most in line with the personality we see depicted there. This video is being done in response to a few comments on some of my previous videos and a poll I put up.
Will you do Beardson next?
Which celebrity face reading I do next, leave a comment under this video. The top rated comment may get to decide my next celebrity face reading. And without any further ado, let's get right into it. We're going to get right into it with one of the most controversial points of contention when it comes to the depictions of Jesus throughout history, his race and ethnicity. What did this guy look like? When it comes to the man depicted on the Shroud of Turin, there are a few key traits that we can notice to try and assess the phenotype of the individual depicted here. First off, we've got a pretty robust face. Even though it's long and thin, the features are very strong, masculine, bony, strong brow ridge, deep set
Charlie
eyes,
Kirkland would be crazy.
Cheekbones, presumably heavy chin, although it's obscured under a beard. And in addition, we also have a very long, thin, and super prominent nose. Right off the bat, this guy is giving me very strong Latorid vibes. Now, this is a phenotype you find in the Near East, in the Middle East. It's found in Lebanon especially, but it is also found all throughout Europe, especially on the coast. That's why it's called Latorid. Latorid comes from littoral, meaning relating to coasts and coastlines. This type actually originated in the Middle East, in Anatolia, and in ancient times, this is pre-Roman and before, spread around Europe through fishermen and seafarers from Anatolia and those
Big Bongo is so pathetic. Look at him. Look at him in chat.
Copper, what have you. And so I think
Millennials so
could definitely be a strong contender
JimboZoomer
for the phenotype of the man that's seen here. But given that we just had the one image and it's from the front only, and as
Bro said, do Jimbo's face. Jimbo's face screams, cringe, mean jerk. Suck on this, Big Bongo. I know you want to. I know you love sucking on things.
We may try to enhance it. It's still pretty obscure. We're going to have to go through a few other potential contenders here. Now, the Shroud of Turin does seem to be from Palestine. They've tested the pollen on it and found that it comes from plants native to that region. They've also done a lot of testing on it and have found that although it originally seemed to be medieval in dating, it now appears to be from the 1st century. So we have to look at the kinds of phenotypes that we find in 1st century Judea and see if any of them match maybe a bit better than Latorid. First off, we'll go with a related type to Latorid, also with a very strong prominent nose found throughout the Middle East, the Armenoid type. Now, there's some features that fit here, especially the facial features, but the head is just too broad. The head of this man is very thin, very narrow, definitely not Armenoid at all. He could be a Syroid. That's a very common Jewish type, but we can see that, again, the head is too broad. This time, the features are actually quite a bit softer, which is another point against this. And thirdly, the Syroid type is not typically a Palestinian or Judean Jewish type. It is a Mesopotamian Jewish type. The Jews picked this type up when they were in the Babylonian captivity, and they were sort of intermingling with the Babylonians and adopting Babylonian traditions. Incidentally, this influenced a lot of the writing of the Talmud and the traditions of the Pharisees, which led to, of course, modern rabbinical Judaism. So a lot of modern Jews have this phenotype. I imagine a lot of the Pharisees probably would have had this phenotype since they were much more strongly linked to that Babylonian lineage, but I don't see.
Yo, what the fuck did Big Bongo just say in chat? Big Bongo just said, I would suck my wife vagina bean. And then Hello Baked says, that gets you the cancer, Bongo. And then Big Bongo says, oh, well, it also gets me a boner.
see it with the Shroud of Turin man. Now, if we look at genetic studies, we find
What is with the chat? Why are all of the just insane people here today? What's going on? We got Karasu, we got Big Bongo, we got AK Mavi spamming up the chat.
that the people of Jesus' day in his region, the ancient Israelites and Judeans,
The
if we
9
look at
day,
DNA
yeah,
samples
true.
from archaeological
First
sites
9
from
day.
that time and compare them to
True,
modern
true.
populations, we find that they are most closely related to various religious minorities throughout the Middle East and that region. And that, of course, makes sense because these types, being insular, isolated religious minorities, have resisted outside influence, namely Southern Arab influence from Islamic invaders. Since they aren't Muslim, they don't mix with the new Arab Muslim invaders, and they retain their original genetics and appearance. So we can see that someone like Jesus would have been very genetically close to a Palestinian Christian, a Lebanese, or a Samaritan. And when you look at Samaritans, a lot of them have a very white look. Specifically, they have a very ponted look. This may come from Greek influence, but it may just be in...
When I see the Shroud of Turin, it gives me like, I don't know why, it gives me like a weirdly, you know, I don't know if anyone's going to agree with this, but it gives me a weirdly Anglo-Saxon like king. Like it reminds me of what I would imagine like Alfred the Great would look like or something. Like when I see the shroud, like the long font face and everything, like that is just giving, I don't know. That's just giving like a great king. Like Western European, which I know it doesn't make sense. I know that doesn't.
conquest and that stronger, darker Arab element.
It just doesn't look like any of these
Throughout the Middle East.
Maybe that's the point of showing all of these.
It's an even weaker fit than a Syroid. It is even softer in the features, and the nose is not nearly as prominent. So that.
He also, yeah, that is true. The contemporary source, the only one, does describe him as having. Actually, there's a few, but it describes him as having blonde hair, right?
Now the last.
But they say that's a forgery or something. I don't know why they say that's a forgery.
Last option is actually a type that's not too dissimilar from Latorde and is an equally ancient type. And this type is actually found in Palestine, but very ancient Palestine, specifically the first agriculturalists you get in the region. It's the Atlanto-Mediterranean or Eurafricanid type. And this is a stronger contender. The nose isn't as prominent, but the robustness and the strength and squareness of the skull are definitely there. So at the end of the day, I would probably have to say Latorde with maybe...
Okay, I could see that. To be fair, okay, to be completely fair, that's the closest of these Semitic or Middle Eastern Mediterranean phenotypes. That one is close.
A strong Eurafricanid, Atlanto-Mediterranean influence. With his phenotype and possible heritage out of the way, we can move on to his physiognomy and personality itself.
But still that just does not really. Okay, I guess. I guess that is, yeah. Yeah, that's close. Yeah. I mean, that's on the actual shroud, though. The other issue is that's not a shroud. That's like a shroud where they're like digitally enhancing and putting like eyes on it, where there's obviously not. That one, this one specifically is giving. Yeah, I don't know. Something like that. Like.
With his phenotype and possible heritage out of the way, we can move on to his physiognomy and personality itself. Now we're going to start off with the side profile and the temperament. Now, of course, we don't have a side profile here. We only have the face, but judging by the way the imprint looks, showing how the cloth would have draped over the contours of the forehead and chin and whatnot, we can make an educated guess. And me personally, looking at these depictions and these reconstructions, I think that this man was probably mostly choleric, maybe with a slight bow of melancholy. You have some seeming slanting to the forehead there. This would mean that this person was very willful, bossy, and commanding, very energetic. They thought, planned, and acted in the long term. Could be a bit standoffish with people, very focused on their work and their goals, but that bow of melancholy gave them some added sensitivity, reactivity, imagination, and emotional connection with others. And we see this is in line with the Jesus of the Bible, especially in the Gospel of Mark, which is my favorite gospel, as it's the most human and humanizing gospel. And so you see throughout the Gospel of Mark, Jesus gets impatient, he gets frustrated, he gets annoyed that his disciples and his followers don't understand what he's saying. They're not understanding his parables, they're not understanding what his mission is here. He's even getting annoyed with the crowds of followers and worshipers who are following him around all over Judea. And sometimes he uses his miracle powers to sneak through a crowd and run off to an isolated...
That is funny. I never thought about it that way. That is really funny.
Thank you, local Groiper.
It is funny because that is so true. Like, so much of the Bible is the New Testament is just Jesus like giving just an obvious parable. Like he's just spelling it out, like what he's trying to say. Like it's, I mean, maybe it's more obvious when you're reading it in the context, like, you know, way in the future, you can read it all together and everything, you know, it's like more obvious what he's saying. But like, it feels like he's just sitting there like spelling it out for them. And then half the time they're just like, what are you trying to say? Like, what do you mean by this? Like when he's talking about the father lending out his land to like the husbandmen or whatever to take care of and like grow vineyards and stuff, and then he sends his like servants and they kill them, and more servants and they kill them. Then he finally sends his son, and then they kill him and rob him and say that, you know, it's theirs and whatever. It's like, what else could that even mean? Like, literally, what else could that be in relation to? Other than everything that he's saying, there's nothing that you could even confuse that with at all. And then they're just like, what? Like, what are you saying?
Quiet place to pray in solitude, and that's definitely giving choleric, melancholic energy to me. Definitely not phlegmatic, definitely not sanguine. As far as I can tell, all signs point to Jesus being kind
You're like, okay, are you saying you're the Messiah?
of an introvert. Now we're going to move on to the face shape of the man depicted.
Hold on. Okay, am I following this right?
Here, which will tell us about his personality.
But we didn't kill you. But we haven't killed you. So
Archetype in the broad strokes of his
but we didn't kill you.
personality as a whole. So the exact shape given differs depending on which artist is doing the reconstruction, because of course it's a bit unclear, but we can see that most depictions agree that it is pretty long and narrow and somewhat rounded. That oblong face shape is the Neptune face shape, and it stands for the prophet archetype.
He is the Neptune. Okay, not even being sacrilegious. He looks like King Neptune in SpongeBob. Hold on, I might be crazy. Literally, he looks like King Neptune in SpongeBob, straight up. Actually, did they base him off the Shroud of Turin? I mean, with like a longer mustache, you know, and the eyebrows or whatever, but that's actually ridiculous. ESL 10.
Oblong face shape is the Neptune face shape, and it stands for the prophet
Same
archetype,
nose,
quite
same
fittingly.
face shape.
People with a Neptune face are very individualistic in their morality. Their morality is self-determined. They are generally in.
I actually have that. I have that shape. I remember when I asked ChatGPT to do facial analysis on my face, it said that. Which is true, which is why I have weird... this is also the same with my astrology. This is why I have weird rules and things that I do or won't do. And they're not always necessarily like consistent or don't really make sense, but they make sense to me. But his is obviously like perfect. I'm just saying that's my facial type. The shape, not the other things. I don't have the nose, but my skull shape. But that's interesting because I think that is a Western European skull shape. A lot of them are, at least I think.
individualistic and independent, highly spiritual, very fixated on spiritual imagery, meanings of that sort, art, creativity, and finding truth. And of course, all these fit with Jesus. Again, it's the prophet archetype. How could it not? But in addition, there seems to be a secondary squarer sort of element there, more angularity. I think this looks more like a Pluto face shape, which stands for very intense energy, in impulse to fight, money changers, anyone? And of course, extreme loyalty and devotion, both to friends and to principles.
Dude, AI is so annoying. If you say skull shape, it immediately ties it to phrenology, and it's like, I'm not gonna answer that. That's evil. Fuck you. Shut the hell up, AI, stupid ass man. Facial shape. Sorry. Dude, I'm not. I was gonna ask ChatGPT, like, what human phenotypes does it relate to? What human phenotypes does it typically relate to? Asking for fun. Northwestern European seacoast types. Or ancient Levantine Eastern Mediterranean mystic archetype, actually. That's what it says. Interesting, actually. The two answers it gives me, independent. I didn't put, like, Jesus's face. I just asked it Neptune, facial shape. Its two answers are Northwestern European seacoast types, pale, fine skin that can burn easily, sometimes with a bluish undertone, light, wavy, fine textured hair, blonde to ash brown, eyes often gray, blue-green, hazel, with watery, misty look, commonly romanticized in Victorian mystic portraits and pre-Raphaelite art, or Levantine Eastern Mediterranean mystic archetypes. An ancient archetype, olive to light brown, skin with golden hair, wavy or loosely curled, often invoked in biblical or esoteric arts as prophets, oracles, and poets. Interesting. That's crazy that it did just say that.
Which Jesus, of course, demonstrated very much. Even if his own disciples betrayed him, he never abandoned them.
Crack the Lord. Dude, you know why it answered me? Literally because I said for fun. Like it was saying, okay, if we're saying for fun and not a strictly scientific claim, okay, and then it gave me the answer.
He did with Peter. And interestingly, some depictions of Jesus Christ from a few centuries later, such as this depiction from around the 6th century.
See, these kinds of, listen, no hate to Orthodox or whoever drew these, but when I see these ones of our Savior, I understand why Islam doesn't let people depict Muhammad or Allah or whatever. Because, like, why did they make his face, like cut in half and, like, broken? Like, that's not a very flattering or good depiction of him. Okay, am I insane? That's, like, the eyes are freaky. Like, that's just not a good one. You know who does do good Jesus Christ art? Mormons. True! Truth nuke! What else? What's the other really good one? I love that one. That one's good. Oh, the Garden of Gethsemane. I love that one. We had that one in my dining room growing up. Big framed copy of that. Good one. That's a really good one. Kind of aura farming with this one. Okay, what? Yo, what is this? Did we draw that one? We might have drawn. I don't know if we drew that one. That one I haven't seen before. It kind of goes crazy though. It's kind of insane. Kind of insane. That one's definitely Mormon though. I think he's appearing to the Nephites and the Lamanites. America. That one as well. Okay, back to this.
From an
Wait, thank you, Derry King, for the 5. Hi. Is there a Frazetta painting of Jesus, dude?
Derry King sent $5.
Listen, Frank
Hi,
Frazetta
JimboZoomer D.
is very talented,
from scratch.
but it's probably good he didn't. Like, that would just be disrespectful.
2,000 wire connections.
That would just be...
I finally had
Frank
this,
Frazetta and Boris Vallejo are
Why
both...
Why the hell would you even do all that? Just seems like a huge waste of time.
Just Coomers.
Yeah, look, I get your point. This does seem kind of pointless. But in a world where computers can simulate real-life phenomena with crazy accuracy and control machinery with atom-wide precision, I feel like there's a lack of appreciation for what's going on under the hood. There was a time when the most capable computers we had were just massive calculators, and now anybody can get a setup capable of running physics simulations and hyper-realistic games. Yeah, I have a feeling we won't be able to run Red Dead on this bad boy. Nevertheless, I want to take you on a journey.
He built a computer from
a simple switch
scratch?
Became the greatest invention in human history. In this video, I want to walk you through what exactly you're looking at here. But first, you're going to have to understand the basic circuitry. A circuit is basically just the path that electricity can flow through. There are 3 main things you need for a circuit to work
Hillbilly
properly.
Groyper.
1, a power supply.
Also,
it supplies
especially
power
not
to the
permanently.
circuit. 2, a
Don't just be
conductor
banning
or wire that makes the loop of the circuit.
because you don't
and
like
3,
them or something.
an output, something that actually does something useful with the electricity. If you connect these correctly,
By the
you
way,
get a complete
what the
circuit. But the interesting stuff happens when you add a switch into the mix. Remember I said we needed 3 things for the circuit's work? A switch breaks one of those rules. It disconnects the conductor. So when we turn the switch on, it allows us to control the circuit. And that's a very powerful concept. Controlling the output of a circuit. Okay, so what if you connect multiple
banned me
switches
from
in the
Lionheart's
circuit?
channel.
Well, depending
Okay,
on the way you
we'll
arrange
take
the
that with
switches,
Lionheart.
you get circuits that can make decisions. Since making decisions need some
I
sort
want
of
my
logic,
mods
then
taking
you
out
can call
personal
these
beefs in
circuits
my
logic
chat
gates.
with the
And I
mod
have
power.
something great to help you visualize this. This is a board I ordered from PCBWay, the sponsor of this video. PCBWay manufactures the highest quality PCBs at head-scratchingly low prices, but there's more. They offer PCB assembly, 3D printing, and CNC machining services too. Head on over to PCBWay for the best quality PCBs, 3D prints, and CNC parts.
Dude, this isn't even going to get to him building it.
Thank you to PCBWay for sponsoring this video. Now let's look at the board they sent me. My god, it's absolutely impeccable. It genuinely hurts me how I ruined this board with my lackluster soldering skills. Oh, what's that? Why is the board so big? Because PCBWay lets you do what you want with your board, and a big PCB is just a status symbol. Or why didn't I put the buttons on the PCB? You're asking the wrong questions, just lock in and listen. Here's the first circuit. It gives you the opposite of whatever the input is. So if the input is on, then the output is not on. If the input is off, then the output is not off. This is called the NOT gate. The second gate works with 2 inputs, and it only decides to turn the LED on if both inputs, A and B, are on. Let's call it the AND gate. The last circuit also takes in 2 inputs, and it turns on if...
That's crazy though. Building a computer from scratch is insane. But yeah, that's a bad painting. I'm not.
Monastery depict Jesus with those face shapes. Sometimes both at once.
Okay, that's crazy though. Yo, he's gonna do the facial analysis of each side of
sometimes one on one side, one on the other. Here we see he's half Neptune and half Pluto, but we'll get more into that later. Alright, now with the broad strokes out of the way, we're going to look at his specific facial features to fill in the details on this man and see what his personality was like more specifically. Now we see that he has long hair and a beard. These were not universal traits back in the day. Romans liked to cut their hair short and be clean shaven, and I'm sure that in ancient Judea you would have had a mix of hair and beard styles. Now in face reading, long hair stands for very spiritually receptive and open energy. It's a hair that can receive and send out psychic signals much more easily than short hair. And this is why you find a lot of spiritual
Wait, say that again.
Receptive. And now in face reading, long hair stands for very spiritually receptive and open energy. It's a hair that can receive and send out psychic signals much more easily than short hair. And this is why you find a lot of spiritual types with long hair, looking to connect with people and spirituality in general. This is also why women have better intuition and a sort of psychic sixth sense. And he also has a beard. Now in face reading, the face is split up into thirds.
They're supposed to. I don't know if that's true.
The social emotional third and the material third. So symbolically, a beard represents detachment from the material. You're covering up your material interest and obscuring them and removing them from your face. This is why many spiritual gurus and wise men also have beards. But now onto the real deal of his facial features, not just his grooming and haircut. He has a small inner face, which means that he would have been quite stress resistant and maybe a bit aloof and detached. But that's in general, and he still had some reactivity there because he had a very prominent bump on the bridge of his nose, which itself was narrow. Narrow bridge of the nose stands for sensitivity, and a bump on the bridge stands for reactivity. So this guy would have gotten overwhelmed at times and maybe lashed out, money changers again, or needed to go hide. Might have gotten overstimulated at times and had to go hide from a crowd off in the desert somewhere, go pray and meditate. Speaking of his nose, it's extremely long, which means that this person was extremely thoughtful, contemplative, and in spite of his reactivity, patient and long-suffering. There's actually a Hebrew idiom used many times in the Bible, which literally reads long of nose, but is used to mean patient. And what do you know? In Exodus, when Moses is meeting with God, God describes himself by this term. God says that he is long of nose. And what do we see here? Someone who is themselves long of nose and, of course, patient. Finally, this person has a very round tip of their nose, which means that in spite of that reactivity and maybe a bit of that aloofness, they were still ultimately a kind person. The eyebrows are pretty low set, which means that this person was pretty decisive, quick to decide, quick to judge. Even though he was very contemplative and thoughtful, it didn't take him a long time to make a decision. He could
This guy's not fully on our side, but he speaks a fair amount of truth, dude. I just gotta ignore. I just really have to ignore.
Judge things pretty quickly. And they were pretty straight, meaning that he was a rational decision maker and maybe even a bit stubborn. Personally, I think if you read Jesus's interactions and debates with the Pharisees, you can see that stubborn intellect coming out a lot. Now down to his eyes are very deep set, which means that he was very withdrawn and calculating and thought before he spoke. Again, this checks out. Think of his debates with the Pharisees or his parables. Very clearly well thought out moral stories. Not so much off the cuff ramblings or intuitive spontaneous preaching, but these thought out parables or the sort of things we read in the Beatitudes. His eyes also seem just a little bit close set, which might signal
this
a
guy is
little
a
bit of judgmentalism and a high disgust impulse. Now this might not sound like the Jesus you've heard about in Sunday school or from American pop culture, but this is in line with the Jesus we read about in the Gospels. He's not just there to tell everyone, just be nice,
don't call me easy,
just be tolerant. He's there to warn of judgment and hellfire and to tell people to repent. Finally, the man seen here has quite a small mouth, which means that he was quiet and reserved. Once again, Jesus was an introvert. I think this is very clear from the Gospels, so that seems to line up pretty good as well. Okay, so before I conclude and give my final thoughts on the accuracy of the Shroud of Turin, I want to run through a few other depictions of Jesus, both ancient and modern, real quick, and give my take on them. The first one is this Orthodox icon from around the 6th century of Jesus as Pancrator, meaning ruler of all or ruler of the universe. This one is very interesting because the creator of this icon intentionally used facial asymmetry to teach a theological message.
Gerald
trying to make him look like that.
One subscription on Kick.
Thank you, Gerald Groiper. Wait, did I miss subs before? Yo, wait, I think I did. Didn't I? Did I get like distracted by it? Thank you. Welcome. Who got it? Welcome. Michael Lionheart, you've been gifted a sub. Did I miss another one earlier? Something. Wait, I can see here. Oh yeah, Local Groiper subscribed earlier. I think I did say that. I think I did. Big shout out.
We can see a strong asymmetry here between the left and right side that becomes way more obvious when you mirror them. The left side of Jesus's face here is very harsh and judgmental. This is Jesus as Lord of the universe, bringer of justice, judger of sinners. But on the right side, we see the merciful Jesus. Jesus as very open, kind, loving, graceful, wanting to give grace and mercy to sinners, wanting to sacrifice himself for others. We can also see that the left side is
That's insane. The right side is crazy there.
Pluto face shape, and the right side is a Neptune face shape. So on one hand, you have the loyal,
The left one's
judgmental
kinda chill, but
guardian
that one's
preserving
insane.
the law of the universe and enforcing justice. And on the other side, you have the graceful, merciful, dreamy prophet trying to bring sinners to repentance so they can avoid that judgment. Now, in face reading as I practice it, the left side of the face stands for the true self, the inner self that you're born as, and the right side of the face stands for the persona you put on over time. And so I think that this is a great way of depicting that God is by nature just. He wants all things to be right, but for our sake, he chooses to become merciful and put off justice out of love for us. Another potential interpretation, if you see the left side as past and the right side as present, is that this kind of shows the more judgmental Old Testament God versus the more merciful New Testament God. And of course, in terms of the facial features and the general look, lots of conspicuous...
That makes sense, but that just looks bad. Like, sorry.
Similarities to the Shroud of Turin man, which is very interesting. Now onto a very different depiction. This is a famous... or should I say infamous reconstruction created by a British anthropologist and professional reconstruction artist by the name of Richard Neve. It depicts a man who looks very different from the man found on the Shroud of Turin or in traditional icons. Now, the story behind this is rather interesting.
Because
it was created not based on any sort of ancient testimonies or anything like that. It was created simply from 3 Semitic skulls found in the region of Palestine. No relation to Jesus or the church or the ancient Jews. Just
I found a couple of skulls. Let's put these together.
Israel, probably Canaanites, just thrown together as a depiction of the real Jesus. This is without a doubt ridiculous. This would be like if somebody 2,000 years wanted to create a depiction of you. So they found 3 random skulls from the general area of your hometown, maybe from your home state, from various different times, and then they assembled them together, figured out what they would on average look like when combined together, and then they applied the pigmentation
the JimboZoomer
and hair
skull
texture of whoever the current inhabitants of that region are 2,000 years later. Again, remember, the Near East used to be a lot lighter in pigmentation before the Arab invasion.
See, this guy is honest. Karasu, we all know that everything you say is just fucking obvious. Everyone knows everything you say. Sorry.
Darkened it. We can see evidence for this in the relic population.
Like, who are you saying see to? We all know that.
Of the original Middle East, people like the Samaritans. These people are a lot lighter than their Arab Muslim neighbors, and that's because they're the original inhabitants of that region. They didn't mix with these southern Arabs who then darkened those
Michael Lionheart just gifted 1 subscription.
Thank you, Michael Lionheart. Welcome, CIA Groiper. Ooh. Inviting the CIA to the stream. Okay.
Now, I'm going to be blunt. I think that this depiction was made intentionally ugly, or at least dissimilar from traditional depictions of Jesus in order to provoke outrage. I think of another ancient reconstruction made by smug, liberal British anthropologists, the Cheddarman reconstruction, where they found that prehistoric British people did not have the modern gene for light skin, so therefore they concluded that they looked like modern African person. No agenda there, right? It's just absurd. Now, I do want to give the caveat.
That's just true. That's just true.
House AF just gifted 1 subscription on Kick.
Welcome, Doug Digovich. Welcome, Doug Digovich. You've been gifted a sub. Let's go. Let's go. Yeah, UK Groiper. That means that you are black.
Of course, the book of Isaiah, offered the 5th gospel for all its prophecies about Jesus, does say that the Lord's suffering servant would have no handsomeness or comeliness that we would envy him. So, of course, Jesus was not some handsome looks maxer. He was a...
He clearly was.
Just gifted 1 subscription on Kick.
Welcome, Kickbot! Dude, the Kickbot, welcome. Oh my gosh, let's go.
Regular Jewish carpenter in the Middle East. But assessments of conventional beauty aside, we can still look at this face and say that it does not fit the man we read about in the Gospels. He's got a broad, low face. He has the face of a farmer, of a peasant, very materialistic, very base, not the face of a philosopher or scholar or prophet or teacher.
Rasu, let me let you in on something. If you figured something out, everyone in the chat has figured it out. Like, no offense, but if you're onto something, everyone else in the chat's already got it down. promise.
Teacher. Nobody was calling this guy rabbi, teacher, father, anything like that. We also see that his brows are very high set. This was not a decisive person. This was someone who took a long time to make decisions. His brows were also very round and curved. He was very consensus oriented. This flies in the face of Jesus. Jesus was a rebel. Jesus was always questioning things. He was questioning the Pharisees on their rules and regulations. He was not someone who would stand back and say, oh, Pharisees on their
The depiction there is so funny. Like, that's good. That's cack.
rules and regulations. He was not someone who would stand back and say, oh, I don't know, I have to think about it, I have to ask my friends what I think about that. No, he knew what he was going to say. And finally, this goober gave this true Jesus a negative canthal tilt, which means that he was a people pleaser, a pushover, a conciliatory person. Nothing could be further from the man we read about in the Gospels. So this gets an F-, 0 out of 10. Your anthropological reconstructions are bad and you should feel bad. All right, now that we're done with that, we're going to end with a bit of a palette cleanser, a depiction by Italian-Lebanese artist Alessandro Tomasi of Jesus based on phenotypic evidence looking at populations that are closely genetically related to the ancient Israelites, as well as the Shroud of Turin and other ancient evidence. Now this one is pretty similar to a lot of the Shroud of Turin reconstructions. It leans much more strongly into the spiritual side. It's very Neptune in shape. There's no Pluto here, so this is a pure prophet, purely spiritual, thoughtful person. The nose is extremely long, which means that this person is very thoughtful, very contemplative.
No, you're thinking of the other one. Fuck. His name?
Not action oriented at all, not impulsive at all. And we see that the eyes are quite a bit bigger than is depicted in the Shroud of Turin, meaning that this person was more open and innocent. Personally, I lean towards the Shroud of Turin side, those smaller eyes. That means that the person depicted would have been a bit more cynical and untrusting. And Jesus was very aware of the sins of the world. He was very aware of the problems of the world. He was not a naive person in the least. So in conclusion, what do I think about the Shroud of Turin? Does it match the Jesus that we read about in the Gospels? I say yes. I think the reason why it bears such a strong similarity.
Thank you, Hussy. Hey, Hillbilly, I hope for bad things to happen to you. Dude, can the chat just chill out?
$5. Hey, Hillbilly, I hope for bad things to happen to you.
Thank you for the 5, though. Big shout out. I appreciate it. Hold on, I'm gonna play this after this.
Two depictions of Jesus throughout history, especially
we
the
got like a
ancient
minute
ones
left,
with
so
that
I'm
long
just
face, long nose, very strong
9
eyes
days
and brows,
war
is
day.
because
No,
ancient
1 day
people
would
knew
be
about
war
physiognomy and they believed in it, and they knew about Jesus's character from the stories about him from the Gospels, and that came out consciously or subconsciously in their depictions of him.
Dude, his face is not that lopsided
like Richard
in the
Neve's
Turin
depiction of this boorish, base Canaanite farmer is not Jesus.
Yeah,
we just know it. There's something deep inside of us, whether it's biological or spiritual, that tells us that a wise teacher does not look like that. Not
Something
to say
tells
that
me
someone who
that's
looks
not
like this
him.
is at the very least a great teacher and prophet and sage, and if you take him at his word, the Son of God. So that
okay, all right.